Well, I guess this has been a long time coming.
For the honor of Grayskull! I am She-Ra!
Hello, everybody. Mac here. Welcome back to the show. Today, we are taking a look at something that has been a long time coming. Closing out the month of March, we have Masterverse Princess of Power She-Ra. Now, the reason this is so important to me, anyway, is if you remember when I was doing the Masters of the Universe Mega Blocks or Mega Constructs reviews, I had mentioned She-Ra. I had mentioned how important she was to me. A viewer asked me why, and I said I would explain it once we got to a review of She-Ra. Well, this isn't exactly what I was talking about at the time. I was talking about the Mega Constructs version of her, but this will obviously do. So if you're interested in finding out why she's so important to me, why she means so much to me, the effect she had on me as a wee little tyke, a wee little Mac, don't worry, that's all at the end. So you can watch the review, you can skip that part. Now, on to this. I know a lot of people have already taken a look at her. I know she's been out since probably, what was it? Spring, summer, fall of last year. I just recently got mine, I think at Christmas, and it's taken me this long to get to her. But I wanted to open her up. I wanted to do a video of her. I wanted to look at her with you. So today we're going to be taking a look at the Mattel Masterverse Princess of Power She-Ra. And you can see we have some really nice packaging right here. She came in the deluxe box where you can see all of the accessories, her shield, the extra head sculpt, the longer cape over here. By the way, if this looks like it's been repackaged, it has. I've actually shot this video once already. I wasn't real happy with the results of it, so I'm coming back and I'm reshooting the whole thing. But I really think this speaks to the quality of the collector's packaging that I was able to pull all of this out, play around with it, shoot a whole video, change my mind, and everything fits back perfectly in place. Good collector-friendly packaging right there. And speaking of the packaging, it is our standard Masterverse, just much larger for the deluxe. We can see all of the product in there. We have the 40th anniversary decal up here, Princess of Power, She-Ra, Masterverse logo up top. On the back, we have some beautiful, beautiful art of her on Swiftwind. This is actually a really good image. We have the cross sell with the figures that came out with her. The Netflix He-Man, Zodak, Netflix Skeletor, Catra, and Hordak. I still got to get Catra. I'm still thinking of getting her to go along with this, to go along with She-Ra. I really like this image of Swiftwind right here. How they sort of went away from like the all white and they gave him like sort of like this purplish hue. I really like this. This is all some great art right here. On the sides, we have another really good shot of her in that iconic pose right there after transformation. Over here, She-Ra, most powerful woman in the universe. On the bottom, not much of anything. So, without further ado, let's once again, this is twice for me, get her out of the packaging and take a look at Mattel Masterverse Princess of Power She-Ra. All right, here she is, Adora, out of the box, and putting the tape measure to her, we can see that she is approximately 6 3/4 inches to the top of her head, 7 inches roughly to the top of her winged headdress, and that size is going to be something that we talk about later when we look at size comparisons. Now, bringing her up close, the first thing I'm going to start off with is while I don't think this is a bad face sculpt, I think they did a really good job on the sculpt, on the coloring, on the look. I think it's a pretty passable, like neutral look. I'm not a fan of it. I don't know why they did this open mouth showing the teeth thing. To me, it kind of gives it a little bit of like a buck tooth look. I don't know. I think if they would have done something as simple as just close the mouth, I think this would have been much better because like if you just cut off the mouth, like the nose, the eyes, everything up top looks good, but this, the open mouth, I'm just not a big fan of that. That is a total personal issue. There are some people that may love this, totally get that, but I can appreciate that it's very well done. The paint apps are just dead on. The eyes are looking straight, so I'm real happy about that. I also really like the gold that they used on this figure. The gold for the headdress, the gold that's in her costume, the gold on the boots, which we'll take a look at in a second. I think the gold really pops, really stands out. Even the gold ringlet around her neck that holds her cape on. Now the cape, let's just go right to the cape. The cape is a little bit of a mess. That it's not wired, it's very thin, and it kind of just wants to flop around, especially after being in that packaging for a while. And it doesn't really splay out correctly. However, I found that you can fold this and actually tuck it underneath her hair, like so. And this helps to make all the world of difference. Maybe not so much presenting from the back, but from the front, that looks fairly good. Now, I'm also going to say that this is the first She-Ra action figure I've ever owned. I didn't own the 80s figure. So I have no point of reference. This is my first exposure, but I do know that there are parts to this figure that we're going to take a look at in a second that you can do, like the Netflix version of She-Ra, you can do the classic version of She-Ra, you can do in-betweens, you can do like a Filmation version. So I think it's cool that you have a lot of options with her because She-Ra has a fairly sizable fan base. So it's really cool that they tried to give something for everybody in there. But I do like being able to fold the cloak or the cape underneath this long hair piece. And I like the flow of the hair piece. I like how there's some red in there to break up the blonde, to sort of give it like this strawberry blonde look. I really dig that. I think the sculpt of her outfit, once again, we have this gold. I really like the gold in her bracers and the design right there in her bracers. I think the body sculpt, you can see the muscles, the biceps in here. I appreciate that. I think this is all really well done. This is a very soft plastic. It doesn't really get in the way of the legs much, a little bit. You'll see that when we get to the articulation. Then we have the bare legs and we have the boots right here. And the boots are really something that I appreciate because these are basically flat boots. I know we have this little design here I could have done without that design because it does make it look like they're trying to give her a high heel almost. But I like that these are just flat boots. These aren't heeled boots. These aren't the ever popular combat wedges that you see a lot of the time on female figures. They're just flat boots. I really like that. I also like how there's a little bit of wrinkle right here at the ankle. Like this is leather. Sort of gives it that worn look like it's been bending on her ankles for a while. I really dig that. I also like the cut of the boot right here. And once again, I like the design that's tampoed on it in just a slightly darker shade of gold. Visually, I think the figure looks great. Like I said, not a big fan of this particular head sculpt, but I think the figure looks great. Now, getting to the articulation. The head can do a full 360, kind of hard with that hair. You can even see that it's dragging her cape around her. Let's get that reset. The hair does hinder her from looking up. She can look down. But like that hair piece wants to weigh it down. Not a whole lot, not any tilt actually on this one. She can do a full 360 with her arms. Arms will come up past 90. We have a bicep swivel, double jointed elbows with some really good travel to them. Wrist swivel, wrists pivot in and out. Now all of them pivot in and out, including her sword holding hand, which is a huge miss. Why this one wouldn't pivot up and down so she can get that iconic pose, I don't get it. This was a big miss for me right here. Now, you can see that we have this ab cut right here that she can do. Oops, cape's getting caught up again. She can do a full twist right there. Cape kind of got caught in it. She can crunch back a little bit. Once again, that big hair piece is getting in the way though. She can crunch forward, not a whole lot, but she does have some decent side-to-side rock right there There's nothing at the waist. It's just this ab cut right in here. Now the legs can come up to the sides, almost up to 90. This is interfering with it. If they would have put like slits in the side, she probably would have been able to get it up higher. Coming forward, it gives way much better, and she can get the legs straight out. She can go back. You see there's a thigh cut right there. Double jointed knees with some really good travel. A boot cut. Ankles rock back. Ankles rock forward. And a forward facing pin for some rocker. Now out of the box, you can see that on her right hand, she has a gripping hand and her left hand is an open hand. And she comes with an alternate set of hands, which the right hand is a clenched fist for punching, and she has a gripping hand for the left side as well. Now, in addition to the smaller cape that she's wearing out of the box, she does have this much longer cape with this sort of shoulder piece right here. And I do believe this is supposed to be shades of the Netflix series. I think I did watch the Netflix series, but truthfully, I don't remember much about it. It honestly didn't leave that big of an impression on me. I'm not saying it's bad. I just didn't care for it. But I do think that this is supposed to be reminiscent of that. And we will put that on her in a minute, because the other thing I want to show you is this head sculpt. And she still has this huge mane of hair that you can see. And you can see there's still some red. There's red etched in there for that strawberry blonde look. But I love this head sculpt. This, I think, is a throwback to the original, where you could take that headpiece she was wearing and sort of like turn it over, and it became like a mask like this. And I love how this is more of like, you know, a warrior visor type thing. They whited out the eyes. This just looks so much better, to me anyway, than this does. Like I said, I'm not saying this is bad. I just really prefer this. So we're going to put the new cape and we're going to put the new head sculpt on her. And to do that, this just pops off. Ugh. There we go, fairly easily. The original cape is just held on by this ringlet around her neck. Now we bring in the longer cape, and that fits on her shoulders. You can see my plastic is a little warped, but I think that'll be fine. And then we take this and we pop this right on there. And yeah, to me, this is a much more imposing look. This is a more regal look. And quite frankly, it is a much more intimidating look. And I really think this is going to be the main way that I show her off. The main way that I show her off and display her. Another accessory that she comes with is this shield, and I know in the cartoon that the Sword of Protection transformed into this shield, but I like on the figure that we have two separate pieces. I really like that, because I know, like I said, canonically, the sword changes into the shield, but I like her having both. I like her being able to be displayed with both. I like her being able to have like sword and board, sword and shield here, and this shield looks great. I really love this metallic silver that they used. I know the gem, the translucent plastic right here is showing sort of red or purple because of my red background, but it is blue. As a matter of fact, you can see on the back that this whole thing was basically molded in translucent blue, and then it was just painted with the silver. And you can also see some really nice design here for it fitting over her arm and her hand. Now, I believe that's what the left gripping hand was for, that it was able to grip onto this. But honestly, with this open hand right here, I have not had issue with sliding this on and just having it fit in there. And she still keeps a really good grip on it, even with the open hand. So I think I'm going to keep the open hand for her for shield wielding, because it also lets you move the shield around a little bit on her arm, just giving you a little bit more mobility, a little bit more of like dynamic posing with it. But I like that. And now we're going to get to the part that everybody's been waiting to see, the Sword of Protection. And once again, this is all molded in some translucent blue plastic and then painted silver. And how do I know that? Because it's already started to flake on me, unfortunately. The first time I shot the video, and I was playing around with her, and I was popping the sword in and out of her hand. You can see that where she grips it, it's already starting to flake off. Luckily, that's easily hidden by her grip on it. I hope it doesn't get any worse than that. I may go over that with some clear fingernail polish just to seal that so that it doesn't flake anymore. But other than that, the sculpt on this is brilliant. Like, this looks like a cartoon accurate version of the Sword of Power. I'm sorry, the Sword of Protection. And I think that looks great. But I do want to bring in the Alcala Sword of Power. And you can see there is a noticeable difference in the two of them right here. And I don't know. That's kind of a bummer because they were supposed to be twin swords, just like Adam and Adora, He-Man and She-Ra were twins. They were supposed to be twin swords. I know they weren't going to make an Alcala version of this, which I would absolutely love if they somehow made an Alcala version of the Sword of Protection, but they could have at least made it the same size, the same length, the same blade width, just so that like you could even cross them on a display or something. But there's a noticeable size difference between the two of them. And we will talk more about size in a second, but she does look really good holding it. And see what I mean? You can just twist it. There's no sight of the, oh, maybe a little bit of the flaking, but she looks good holding it. She looks good all geared up like this. I really like her like this, with the mask, the serious look on the face, the long cape, the shield, the sword. I think this looks great. I think this is the She-Ra I've been waiting for. This is the She-Ra I've been wanting, and I'm really, really happy with how this looks. And now for size comparison, here she is beside Mattel Masterverse 40th Anniversary He-Man and the Masters of the Universe movie Skeletor, and this is where I have a problem with her size. She's too small. I mentioned this in a short that I did about Scarlet. I don't know why Hasbro and Mattel specifically, I'm talking about. There are other companies that do it, but those are the two that are standing out right now, has this habit of downsizing their female figures so much. She is able to look He-Man in the eye. In the cartoon, in the movie, the animated movie, she is always able to look him in the eye. And for her to be this size, this thin, I really feel like she should have been higher and bulked out more. There is this great image from the Filmation cartoon, and yes, I know I've talked poorly about the Filmation cartoon in the past, but there is this great image in the Filmation cartoon where they're standing on a mountain, lightning strikes, they have their swords crossed, and all you really see is their silhouette. And she is matching him, and this is too small. She needs to be bigger. I'm really hoping Mattel comes out with like a new Eternia version of She-Ra, or maybe even if they continue this line and give us like what if figures, maybe like a Masters of the Universe movie deco version of She-Ra. I really hope they bulk her out more. Here she is beside McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Last Night on Earth Wonder Woman with the Helmet of Fate, and DC Direct Page Puncher's Supergirl from Injustice 2. And for everything I just said about those two companies downsizing their female figures, she is about the same size as Supergirl here, but we discussed Supergirl's shortiness in that video. Here she is beside McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Azrael and Etrigan the Demon. Here she is beside Hasbro Dungeons & Dragons Driz Duerden and Hasbro G.I. Joe Classified Series Snake Eyes. And finally, here she is beside NECA Toys Dungeons & Dragons Warduke and Grimsword. So it was pretty much a given that I was going to like this figure when I got her. I knew I was going to like her. I knew as soon as I opened her up, I was going to be like, yes, I finally have some form of She-Ra in my collection. And That's not to say that I don't have issues with it. I think the biggest one that I pointed out is that she's way too small. She needs to be bigger, and I really hope that this isn't the last version of her that they release. And I do hope that the next version will be scaled up. Maybe not as big and as bulky as the Masterverse figures, as the male figures, but I definitely want her to be on the same height as He-Man. They need to be the same size. They need to be able to look each other straight in the eye. Now, with that out of the way, let's get to the part that I know most of you are going to skip, and that is why She-Ra is so important to me. You have to understand, in 1985, I was 9 years old, and I was very much of the opinion of, boys rule, the boys club, that whole thing. If you grew up in the 80s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And even though I bag on the Filmation series a lot, I did watch it when I was a kid. That's how I know I didn't like it, because I watched it all the time. And my biggest problem with the Filmation series, even as a kid, I never felt there were any stakes. I never felt there was a threat. I always knew He-Man was going to win. I always knew Skeletor was going to lose. I always knew his henchmen were idiots, and I always knew He-Man's friends were all brilliant. There was no tension, there was no threat, there was no investment in it. Until the secret of the sword, for me at least. It was a very big moment. It was a very iconic moment. It is one that has stuck in my head since I was a kid, since I was that 9-year-old kid sitting in front of my TV. He-Man was captured. He was imprisoned. They were draining his energy. As far as I was concerned, they were draining his life out of him. Adora, as we all know, was a force captain working for the Horde. He-Man was a prisoner of the Horde. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, Adora was even the one that threw He-Man into that energy-draining cell. The sorceress called out to Adora, threw the Sword of Protection, told her what was up, said, hey, this isn't you. You're the stolen princess of Eternia. That man is your twin brother. He needs your help. And Adora picked up the sword. She spent a few seconds hemming and hawing. For a kid, though, it was an eternity. And then He-Man grunted, and then he hit the ground. He fell. He was weak. We've never seen that before. We had never seen that before up until that point. My 9-year-old brain is thinking, holy crap, He-Man is dying. What's going to happen next? I'll tell you what happens next. Adora said, no, my brother, and no hesitation, lifted the sword, said the words, transformed into She-Ra. And just as a side note, I think that's one of the main reasons I had issue, or not issue, but I think that's one of the main reasons I didn't really like the Netflix series, was that they always portrayed Adora as this reluctant hero. She didn't know if she wanted to be She-Ra. Maybe she wanted to be She-Ra. Maybe she didn't want to be She-Ra. There was a lot of back and forth. Didn't really like that. What I loved about the first incarnation of her was that she decided to be the hero from the beginning. Somebody was hurt. Somebody needed her help. And she made the choice, and there was no going back from there. Now, back to the secret of the sword. She transformed into She-Ra. She went over, and she saved He-Man's life. She saved his life. You have to understand what that did to my 9-year-old brain, to what that did to me as a kid. It expanded my world. Literally expanded my world. I know that sounds pretentious. I know that sounds overly dramatic, but in a second, I understood what was happening. And I may not have understood the effect it was going to have on me moving forward in my life, but looking back, I can definitively say that moment had a big impact on how I interact with women. Let me explain. He-Man was the most powerful man in the universe. He had never needed help before that. If anything, Man-at-Arms, Teela, all of the others called on him for help. All of the other ones were always captured, and they needed his help. There was never any stakes. Like I said, you always knew He-Man was going to win. He-Man didn't win this time. He-Man needed help. He-Man needed her help. She rescued him. but he was still the most powerful man in the universe. She was the most powerful woman in the universe. Like, I don't know if I can properly explain the impact this had on me. It was okay for him to need help. It was okay for him to need her help. It didn't take away from who he was as a man, as a hero, as a character, as a person. It just completely changed how I looked at asking for people for help. It completely changed how I saw women, the girls in my class, everything. It changed so much for me. It was very eye-opening, and I am very grateful that I got to share this story with Melody Britt when I met her at RetroCon. I purposely waited until the line was clear. I was the last one in line, just so there was nobody else behind me, and I could share this story with her, and she appreciated it. We had a bit of a moment, I think. I really think it affected her, knowing that something that she did made that much of a difference in a kid's life. And I really wish I would have gotten a picture with her. I was so flustered and out of my mind in getting to talk to her. I really wish I would have gotten a picture with her. But it's the truth. Like, this all changed the way I saw things. Like, it helped me grow. It helped me mature. I know that's ridiculous at 9 years old, but it did. It really did. So that is why when people say, oh, they were just half an hour toy commercials, they didn't have any value, they didn't contribute anything, they just got kids hooked on the toys and made them want to buy the toys. There is no denying that they were intended to be half an hour toy commercials. I have never disputed that. But don't tell me they never contributed anything to a child growing up. Don't tell me they didn't have effect on us growing up. Because I can tell you firsthand, yes, they absolutely did. And that's my story, and I'm very happy about that, and I'm very proud of that. And I thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me weave this little tale for you. So until next time, my friends, play well, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, thank you for watching.